So Danna, a recent survey has revealed that more than 1/3 of households in the Illawarra Shoalhaven are food insecure. And food insecurity just means that people don't have access to enough affordable and nutritious food to lead a normal and healthy life. Shockingly, about 1/3 of those households are families with children at home.
Yep.
And a significant proportion are not accessing any kind of food relief at all.
That's a common story that we hear from families, nearly every day of the week.
It's shocking. It's shocking. In fact, and I'll just quote one father who was quoted in the report said, "When the bills come in, as a parent, I'll starve rather than see my children go hungry. I do without so the rest of my family can eat."
It does pull at your heart, and it's just what you said is really shocking, Nikki, that families are going without, especially in this day and age. In Australia in 2025, families should not be starving, and families are starving, and it shouldn't be happening.
It should not be happening. It should not be happening. I'm Nikki Sloan, and I'm coming to you today from the beautiful lands of the Dharawal people. I'm CEO of Community Industry Group, and this is Community Matters, the podcast where we explore community solutions with people who are making a difference. And today I'm really pleased and proud to be joined by Danna Nelse. Danna is the manager of the Albion Park and the Albion Park Rail Community Centres. Yep. Danna is a recipient of the Order of Australia Medal for her incredible work for community, and very proudly, Danna is a life member of Community Industry Group. She has contributed so much to this organisation. So thank you for joining us today, Danna.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nikki. It's not that it's a pleasure to be here talking about an issue like this, but I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm here representing all the neighbourhood centres across the Illawarra, which says around about 14, from Thurul down to Ulladulla. So in the Illawarra and Shoalhaven, I should say, and it's an issue, I've worked in this sector for over 30 years in neighbourhood centres, in the same centre, and food insecurity and the cost of living, it's real. A lot of people say, it's just something we're going through, it's a leftover from COVID or, blah, 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 but it's absolutely real, and we're seeing the impacts on families. It's real, it's unrelenting, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better.
So how has the services that you deliver as a community centre, have you seen them change then over the years?
Oh, very much so. You go back 30 years, neighbourhood centres historically didn't do crisis work. I don't ever remember 20 years ago doing a food parcel.
Yeah.
Never. We've always done information support and referrals, and you get the one-off and crisis. But now for neighbourhood centres, it's becoming like the new normal. Crisis, doing food assistance. We're seeing anywhere from 5 to 6 a week. Other neighbourhood centres see a lot more, like Wollongong, Bellambi, Berkeley, Unanderra, and they've got special food pantries set up. Yeah, so where people can come and do a shop, that's...
Yeah. Yes. So neighbourhood centres used to be a place for neighbourhoods people to come and congregate.
Yes, yeah, and to connect with others. We used to have a lot of fun activities, and because neighbourhood centres predominantly, most of them only have 1 or 2 staff people. So then we've had to pivot really quickly, and most of our work is targeting, assistance with food, clothing, nappies, helping people stay connected with their electricity through the EPA system. It's just a daily thing.
And I think, when we typically think about people who don't have access to food, we typically would, think about people who were perhaps homeless or people who are maybe on welfare. But we're seeing a big rise in the working poor.
Yes.
And in fact, even the working homeless. Are you seeing that?
Yes, we are seeing that. We're seeing families who are homeless living in their cars but still needing to go to work and drop their children off at school. We're seeing a lot more families who might have two incomes, a mortgage or rent, and with the increases in rent, food, electricity, everything else, they can't survive financially. No. So they're robbing Peter all the time to pay Paul. They're having to make really intolerable decisions that impact on their whole family, like, do I pay the rent or put food on the table? Do I buy the kids' school uniform or go and buy some groceries? They're not decisions families should have to make. And for some families, it's tearing them apart.
Yeah.
And it's really impacting on their health, their employment opportunities, their housing, their education, their mental health and well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. They are not decisions that people should have to make.
No. Not in Australia, not today.
No.
And we are seeing that more and more. Like I had a woman in yesterday, and she needed help with her electricity account. But when they come to neighbourhood centres, we look at them in a holistic way, not just deal with what the issue is. And when I got speaking to her, she's got a grandson living with her, not getting any assistance yet through government. She's on a pension or job seeker allowance, actually. She suffers really badly with depression. She's supposed to look for work but having trouble doing that, but just getting behind in the bills and the rising cost. And you could tell she needed a bit of pampering herself. So what we did after talking to her and helping with her electricity and some food and some clothing and for the child and a few other things and a school uniform voucher, we're doing a mum's pamper day next week. And so we asked her, would she like to go along? And she said, no, I just can't afford it. We said, no, it's free. Come along, have lunch, get your hair done, blow-dried, washed, get a facial, get a massage. You'll be there for about 3 hours. You just have to fill in the paperwork. And she said, oh, where is it? She said, I haven't been pampered in a long time. And they're things we just take for granted, I think, a lot of us. Yeah, but there's a lot of families, a lot of people out there who, don't get any of that pampering and they just can't afford it.
Yeah.
And they're going without all the time.
And I think we all know how much better we feel.
Oh, yes.
It does. It's so much more than the way you look when you've had your hair done, or it's emotionally and mentally makes you feel so much better.
Yeah. And I think for that person, just I saw the difference in her, the way she walked out from when she came in, and she was a little bit happier, because she got her electricity bill sorted and done on payment plans and all the rest of it, but also knowing that she had an opportunity to go and do something nice for herself.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You mentioned previously when we've been talking about what you called the not-for-profit starvation cycle.
Oh, yes,
Do you want to talk about how that's impacting the work of neighbourhood centres?
Well, that's been creeping up on us for over many, many years, and the not-for-profit starvation cycle, it's about where funding hasn't kept up and governments don't seem to acknowledge the indirect costs associated with running a not-for-profit service. Things like insurance, admin costs, stationery, office supplies, a whole pile of those indirect costs that are really increasing for services, but it's not included in our funding. So over time, funding is eroded. But what organisations tend to do, we do more with less all the time. We work more than what we're supposed to do more than what our funding tells us we have to do, because we don't like to turn anyone away in neighbourhood centres. Most of us have an open door policy where we welcome anybody, even though most of our funding is directed to certain groups of people. But you can't turn someone away, if they come seeking assistance. Yeah, but getting back to the not-for-profit starvation cycle, once you start doing more with less, then governments see that as a thing saying, oh, they can do it.
Yeah.
They don't need that increase in funding. So it just becomes a vicious cycle. But it actually needs to stop, because not only are families starving, and I know it's not the same thing, but not-for-profit services are starving for that financial assistance. And we can't continue to do what we're doing on the money we have. And given that most the neighbourhood centres funding, governments don't directly fund food assistance, most of us are relying on charities or Oz Harvest to provide that food. But the people we're getting donations from, they can't continue to give donations because they're struggling. Yeah. So they've got to cut back. But that cycle's got to stop. And organisations have to stop accepting the crumbs and the leftovers all the time. And that's what the not-for-profit sector does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've been saying for years that really government benefits from the unpaid work of the not-for-profit sector, and
definitely. It's
not fair. Nobody would expect that any of the big corporates don't have administration costs and electricity and insurance. Why is it not recognised in the not-for-profit sector? We're all having to operate viable businesses to be here next year, and we have to recognise that those costs are real costs of doing business.
Yeah, Nikki.
And need to be paid for.
Yeah, and the other thing coupled with that is also, like I've seen over 30 years, I've seen a lot of reforms within our funding reforms, over that time. But what they all have in common is when they decide to do a funding reform, it's about cutting. It never comes with any increased funding. That's the commonality. It's always you need to cut, you need to provide more with less, and we just accept it and do it. Yeah, and we need to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Given all of that, what do you think the future holds for neighbourhood centres and community centres?
Look, neighbourhood centres have been around for a long time. I think they're very resilient. They pivot really quickly, and that was evident through COVID, how most of the neighbourhood centres kept their doors open and kept providing crisis services and food. Like during COVID, I was dropping food off to families' doorsteps.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and nappies and things like that. Together, that was through assistance through Shoalhaven City Council, which were fabulous then. But neighbourhood centres do really well. So some of the things the neighbourhood centres across the Illawarra and Shoalhaven do, they either provide emergency food hampers, they've got their food pantry open where people can come and collect groceries. They do lunch menus or lunch meals, pre-packaged food. A lot of us run breakfast programs for children and young people, so at least the children and young people are not going to school hungry. Through those programs, a lot of the young people also get a lunch bag, so they've got lunch as well. A lot of schools provide lunch programs as well, so I take my hat off to them as well because they don't get funding for that. And some neighbourhood centres provide a afternoon tea program or a coffee session where they provide food and people pick up their food hamper to try and keep them connected to services all the time. It's really varied.
It's amazing work, and it's work that often doesn't get very well promoted. I think neighbourhood centres and community centres are so important, local, place-based, accessible for your local community, and not necessarily broadcasting out all of the amazing work that you do. Yeah,
we don't beat our own drums most of the time, but I think that's because we're so busy, and plus we don't get funding to market ourselves. That's not part of our funding. So we're reliant on doing our own flyers. We don't have people in the background, who can develop all our posters and flyers and all that. I do that myself.
Yeah.
And that's not my field of expertise. But I've learned over the years. I know they're not flashy or anything. We do our own newsletters. Yeah. And marketing is probably something we could do better at, a lot better at. But we just don't have the time.
No.
When you're dealing with families, that's more important than, doing the marketing. But we need to do that. But then it's a two-edged sword, because if we market ourselves too much, we can't keep up with demand, and we don't have the resources to be able to provide additional food and assistance to people, especially when, as I said before, when most of us are only 1 or 2 person organisations, reliant on volunteers as well. Yeah, we couldn't meet up demand and we'd have to turn people away.
So marketing really would be aimed at people who could provide support and assistance, really, rather than marketing for more clients. So
yes,
how could, if people listening today wanted to help neighbourhood centres, what kinds of ways could they help and support the work you're doing?
I think donating food, volunteering, but I think the best thing anyone can do when they see anyone doing it tough out there, give a helping hand. Put out your hand. Don't judge, because you don't know what those families are going through. And, so just give a hand. But, drop into your neighbourhood centre, see what they offer, see how you can get involved, because all neighbourhood centres are different and they all require different supports. So, but just drop into them and see what you can do and, you'd be made most welcome. You'd always be offered a cup of tea or coffee in most of our neighbourhood centres. We're very welcoming and we provide that real personal service. People aren't just a number when they come to a neighbourhood centre.
Beautiful. So you've done 30 years in this job.
Yeah, over 30 years.
Over 30 years in this job. Yeah. What have you learned?
You can't do it on your own. Yeah, you have to have other people to help and support. We do it through partnerships with other organisations. I've learnt you have to develop really great relationships with other services, with people in your community. I've learnt to be resilient. I've learnt to leave at work when I go home, because otherwise... you just dig yourself into a hole, I think. I've learnt the value of neighbourhood centres. I've learnt that they're always welcoming. The staff are fabulous in neighbourhood centres. Yep,
yes, they are.
They are fabulous. And they're always there when people need them,
This podcast is called Community Matters. Could you tell us about a person or people in this community that matter to you?
Yeah, there's been a lot of them over the years, but there's some. I would definitely say all the neighbourhood centres and all the workers in those centres and all the volunteers. But there's been some really. I've had some great mentors who are not official mentors, but I've looked up to them and I've worked alongside and I've learnt from them. People like you, Nikki.
Oh.
Yes, you. When I first worked with you at council, all those years ago when you worked at Shoalhaven Council, I learnt a lot from you and I still hold on to some of those things. From Narelle Clay, the CEO of Southern Youth and Family Services, she's been a fabulous mentor over the years and I've learnt so much from her.
Too many of us,
yes. About a whole range of different things. From people in the union like Angus McFarland and others who came before him. And I just learned from the local community.
Yes.
I learn that, a lot of people when they come through our doors and need assistance and I say, look, we can help with this, this and this. Oh, no, give it to somebody who needs it more. And these people don't have any food in their cupboards. And they always say, give it to somebody who needs it more. There's somebody more deserving.
Yeah.
And, so I've learned that how gracious community is, and how welcoming community is. Yep.
That's a beautiful note to end on. So a really big shout out to you and the work you do. A big shout out to all community centres and neighbourhood centres for the amazing work they do. I would encourage anybody to take Danna's advice and go through the door and see either how they can help you or maybe how you can help them, which would be a marvellous thing, something there for everybody. This has been Community Matters. Thank you so much for joining us today. I encourage you to to leave us a review, to share this podcast and stay tuned for Community Matters with more stories of innovation from our community. Thank you.